Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome back to another episode of the Free Marketeers podcast. You're watching Chris Hattingh with Martin van Staden and Mpiyakhe Dhlamini. Thanks for joining us once again. Apologies for the few weeks that we've been away. Martin and I were traveling, and Mpiyakhe was doing more important work than what we do here. So we finally managed to bring everyone back in the same room on the same day. So quite an achievement, I think.
Yeah, geez.
Like getting libertarians together is like herding cats. So
yes.
I think this is good. We're going to talk about two things today. Eskom, recent comments from the COO, and then also we're going to talk about taxation. And I know you all are very interested in that, but we all like to complain about taxes and how much we pay, so there's some more news around that this week. So on that topic of taxation, at this point last year, SARS had collected 39% of its target, and at this point this year, it's only collected 37%. So you might only think 2%, well, in the greater scheme of things, that's quite a bit. Then another point, more than a tenth of South Africa's entire revenue is budgeted to come from just 120,751 people. That's 0.2% of the population. We know that fewer and fewer people in South Africa are paying their taxes, that the tax base is very small. Well, these numbers show you that it's getting smaller and smaller. I don't think we should be terribly surprised at the sort of idea of a tax revolt. This might be a silent one, people moving their money overseas. I'm not terribly surprised because we don't see the service delivery that is promised. I don't think a lot of viewers, maybe people here as well, necessarily opposed to paying tax if it's used well, if it's at least used for what they say it will be used. But we know that it's not the case through state capture, all this sort of stuff, corruption. So what do you guys think? Do you think there should be... Surely it should be up to every individual to decide, okay, at this point I'm not going to pay taxes anymore, especially when they don't see any bang for their buck.
Yeah, no, look, there's a scholar at Cambridge, I think his name is Trevor Allen. He's a constitutional scholar. He's not a libertarian or anything like that, but he makes a good point about at some point in your own country's context, you're going to reach a point where complying with the law is totally incompatible with your value system. And he says basically you need to make that decision for yourself.
Yeah.
It's a very intensely personal decision, and he says basically that's an intricate part of the rule of law, the concept. To say that individuals need to have the power to make that decision for themselves. And I think in South Africa we're going there at this stage because the NHI, for example, I think is... they're saying it's going to cost something like 400 billion rand or something. Eskom has a debt of something like 500 billion. And already SARS is not even... I mean, if I understand those percentages right, SARS isn't even collecting half of what it needs to do everything government wants to do. So, yeah, it's a decreasing number. We all know why it's decreasing. A small part of it is corruption, but a big part of it is government policy that kills economic activity. And now government has the goal to come to us and say, please pay more.
No.
I mean, even Eskom is raising its tariffs, so governments are just saying, come, more.
No.
So yeah, I mean, I cannot say we should do a tax revolt. That would be illegal, but I think everyone needs to reach that point of saying, well, maybe up until here and no further. I think poorer South Africans are pretty good with this, and a lot of people complain about it. I think it's a great characteristic to have. It's basically to say, oh, those laws mean very little to me. I'm just going to act as if it doesn't exist. It's unfortunate when that goes along with property damage and so forth, but I agree. I think tax revolt is probably on the horizon, if not already in full swing.
Mpiyakhe, for you, what do you think? Do you think it's going to come a point where no one pays taxes anymore? Or do you think the state will still somehow manage to stay afloat?
I think this is the brilliance of the economic laws, because individuals acting rationally, I mean, even people who don't necessarily believe in individual liberty, there comes a point where they just say, hey, this is not working for me. I need to find a way to avoid paying this fee that I have no choice but to pay. So, but I'll still find a way to avoid paying it, which is one of the great things for me. It's one of the things that brought down apartheid. I think that's aspects of it. I think it was in an article on the Daily Friend. It was John Kane Berman who wrote it, if I'm not mistaken. But he was making the point that people just simply decided that, hey, acting rationally. Oh, no. I was reading something you were quoting, John King Berman. But so the individuals just decided that, hey, we are acting rationally now. Acting rationally, they are going to oppose these laws, not consciously, but just like following their own self-interest, and that's and it shows up these social engineering schemes or these authoritarian schemes. It shows them up for being incompatible with human nature when this happens. Whenever there's a clash between economics and politics, it just means that the politicians are trying to do something that is incompatible with human nature, because economics is an expression of human nature. And so that's I think it's a great thing. I think this is great what's been happening in South Africa with e-tolls, TV licenses, and all of those things that people, South Africans are avoiding taxes or rebelling against taxes. And government really is in big trouble here. It's not they will have to find the money somewhere, and so they of course they will first start with prescribed assets, and I think someone should probably do an analysis and try to predict where the technical default happens, where the money that has to be taken up in debt and the interest that has to be paid on that debt exceeds the taxes that can be raised. Not that government can still technically repay the debt, but it can't service the debt.
Yes.
And
there comes that turning point.
So they would need to either cut spending or seize property in the form of prescribed assets or something like that, or just to rely on inflation like the Zimbabweans did and just print money. So those are the choices that are going to be available to them, and it's not a nice. None of those are good choices.
You don't think they're going to go to the IMF?
I think they will try to put that off as much as possible, because if they can seize domestic property through prescribed assets, I think for them that's preferable, because they get to set their own conditions rather than take the IMF's conditions. So
going to the IMF is sort of an admittance of failure. I mean, maybe in some ways they realize they've failed, but they're sort of on this path now.
And even the IMF keeps encouraging them. They say things like, South Africa is in a terrible debt situation, but you guys, most of your debt is domestically held, so you shouldn't worry too much. That by implication, what they're really saying is that the government can just steal stuff from you guys. Don't worry, us international people are safe. So good luck with that.
My goodness, can't trust anyone.
I was also going to mention Davi Roux, the well-known economist. He gave a talk here at the FMF Wednesday evening. If any of you would like to watch, I'll upload that file sometime today or on the weekend. I just received it from the videographer, so I encourage you to watch that. Davi's always very interesting.
Yeah, it's already on the Facebook page, I think.
Yeah, but if you want to watch it on YouTube, obviously. He said in an article, I think it was on My Broadband, I just saw the quote, so he said there could be a possible increase in personal income tax this year, and also the petrol price and VAT. I don't know about the VAT one, because we know how sensitive that one is, especially for poorer South Africans, and what that could result in. No. But Davi, I mean, he does, he's more on the sort of negative side with everything. I don't know if you I don't know how you can be very... I don't know how you can't necessarily be negative with everything we read about every day and see. But those are just sort of two examples. Government can keep pushing that envelope a bit more. This was the big premise in Atlas Shrugged, where the productive people are demonized for being productive, and at some point they decide this far no further and they leave society. So the same sort of thing, I think. If you can go overseas, you'll do that, but all these taxes and government spending that they can't service, the debt, it's going to have the biggest negative effect on poor South Africans. It's going to see increases in the fuel price, the petrol price. What we always say, we don't want to, you shouldn't get the impression that the liberalism and the free market ideals we argue for is because we favor big business and wealthy individuals. Of course, they should be left alone and be free to operate their businesses. But it's just that these policies that take more from South Africans, that take their property in the form of prescribed assets and expropriation without compensation, all these things have a cumulatively negative effect on poor South Africans.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess it's something I'll never really understand, but if the government now is coming around to understanding that it's entering an untenable financial situation, why is it I mean, okay, so we're classical liberals, we think welfare is a bad thing, that's just a fact, but why do you keep departments like science and technology?
Right.
Billions of rands. Why do you keep the Department of Sport and Recreation? Billions of rands. The Department of Economic Development? Billions of rands. What self-interested reason could government possibly have to throw money that it could be spending on buying votes, to be frank, buying votes of welfare? Why is it throwing that money at academics and at these. I mean, I've been to a few of these silly workshops that government arranges with people, and it's like everyone gets together and does motivational speeches.
This Indaba and that Indaba.
Yeah, the fourth industrial revolution, and it's a whole day thing, and I can see the money oozing out of the walls. It's like this expensive venue and expensive food, and I'm like, my goodness, I think everything you do as a government is wrong. You know that you're entering an untenable situation financially, yet you continue to spend money on these things.
Right.
There are places to cut spending. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
There are places, even for a socialist government, to cut spending, yet they don't. So, I mean, I am very confused about it. I mean, we all understand government wants to control more and more things, but my goodness, where is its desire for self-preservation?
I don't think it's being long-term rationally self-interested at all.
No.
Because you'd want to keep alive this golden goose that lays the golden eggs. It's going to dry up at some point. The milk and the eggs will dry up from the cow and from the goose. So I don't know.
Well, it's if you look at it, like departments like science and technology, sports, they make up a very tiny part of the budget, like in relative terms.
But they still take money.
Sure, you could cut there. I definitely could cut there. But on the other hand, like if you cut science and technology, I guarantee the entire academic elite is going to come after them.
Oh, fly me a river. Just not that. Save us. Whatever we do.
These are the people who control the climate of opinions. These are the people who...
They might then have to compete in an open market. And I don't think that's going to work very well.
That's always going to be
That's why they look down on the market, because there's actual competition.
Yeah.
So, it's so crass, all that materialism.
Agencies like CSIR would probably need to be closed. Some of the laboratories that do nuclear research, Timber Labs and places like that might need to be closed.
But all this research would be done in a private market, so theoretically
it might be different kinds of research, but because I'm not so sure that the market would value some of the research.
It will be useful research, you mean?
Well, there's a lot of prestige in it. For example, the CSIR has done a lot of groundbreaking work on lasers and things like that, which is South Africa is first in.
Yeah,
so government loves prestige.
And if the market wanted that, it would have demanded that research.
Sure, so, I understand the economics of it, Martin. Like, I understand the economic case. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate for government's sake here and say, as much as we see the clear rationale here, but for them it's just like, okay, I cut these things, I save a little bit of money relative to the entire budget, and then in return I lose the academic community. I lose all of this prestige that I'm getting internationally. South Africans doing well first.
But we stay afloat. My God, that is
no, they don't even stay afloat. That's my point. Like, it's a small part of the budget, so they still need to cut in many other places.
It helps.
They still need to cut in many other places.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think because they profess so much to care for poor South Africans and welfare and all that stuff, they talk about the importance of the grants. Why not then focus on those? You profess to place these people's lives as a higher value, but now you want the prestige. It's like saying we should be proud of SAA. Well, not really. It's a flying carcass.
And even welfare can be reformed to be cheaper but more effective. Yes. So there are many of those types of things that government can look at, but it's outright refusing to. I mean, we don't even have to tell it cut welfare. Just reconfigure things in such a way that people who don't deserve welfare don't get it, and that maybe change a grant to a voucher, stuff like that. Far more effective, more bang for your buck. But government isn't even considering that, and that's weird because this is not a radical libertarian proposal. It's very much still within the statist welfarist paradigm. So it's
well, there's a lot of interested parties there. Like, there are a lot of bureaucracies, hospital management, school management, people who manage the delivery of grants and all these things. I'm just telling you that it's going, like, the rationale doesn't seem to make any sense, but there are a lot of vested interest in there. Like, what their words don't match with their actions, and then that's when you must look for the vested interest.
Well, they need to decide if they want to continue existing. So.
Here we go, an existential crisis for government.
Exactly.
Well, somehow the Zim government still survived. This is the problem, because you can have the Venezuelan government still survives, of course.
Does it have effective control over the state?
No, but they're happy in their.
They probably don't control. They probably don't control the entire country. I doubt that. I doubt this Venezuelan government controls the entire country.
But what I think,
utopia. What I think happens is they can still extract some resources and use those resources to keep themselves fed.
Their standard of living.
But then they have no prestige, like in the Congo. The Congolese government controls Kinshasa, and that's all.
For them, their priority is staying in power, and then everything else comes after it.
Right.
Do they also drive around with their military outfits and?
Oh, I wouldn't be
so then they have their prestige.
Oh, sure.
I think Robert Mugabe, when he went to Singapore for his healthcare before he died, I'm sure he was in his regalia and looked very prestigious and all that.
Oh yes, a dignified death for a tyrant.
It's a terrible situation we are in. I hope this is not controversial. Everyone knows the more all of those taxes, personal income tax, VATs, all of those have been raised.
Yes.
Like 2015 we raised VATs. Last for this current budget we raised personal income tax by just allowing inflation raise the tax.
Self-tax.
Exactly. So all of these taxes have already been raised, and we've raised less money than what we got before. So clearly, thinking rationally, which is why government is just not rational. Thinking rationally, we say, okay, raising these things after they've failed to do anything before is the stupidest thing you can do. Like the only other option is to cut tax now. Or just maybe leave it alone and then cut spending. But no, they won't do any of that.
Well, this comes back to a big part of liberalism is about force versus voluntary interaction. So this might feel counterproductive, that sort of thing, but appeal to people to invest in the country. Make the best argument for why they should stay here. Make sure that their property rights are secure. Try and hold back inflation, that sort of thing. Tell them that if they stay here, they can grow their businesses and then they can employ more people. Don't force them to pay taxes and to be moral. Once you hold a gun to someone's head, you're not going to get the desired outcome.
Yeah, it's like this new BEE thing. They're trying to enforce that even more stringently. I mean, that's practically suicidal. I mean, all the big companies in this country have basically already told government, listen, we're leaving, bye. And now government is saying, no, wait, one more thing. I'm going to force you to... It's like, we don't care. We're leaving. Bye.
BE is absolutely one of the things destroying the economy right now. I remember there was a conference with EU investors, I think, and they straight out told the government that, we would like to invest here, but you have this requirement that we must give up part of our capital, and you are risky enough as it is, so thanks, but no thanks.
Well, South Africa has a lot going for it, but not the government, unfortunately.
It's like all of these brilliant people in the country, they just chose the West among them, elevated them, and they said, okay, run us.
Government tends to attract that.
That's the most frustrating thing of all. We have, for all our faults, we are still a very well-functioning democracy. We have it within our power to take this government and any provincial government and any local government that errs on the side of more intervention rather than less, to take them out of power. We can do that like this. We insist on not doing it, and then we cry and say, oh my goodness, look how this government is killing the economy. It's like, well, in South Africa, I think there is some truth to be said that people get the government they deserve. And I'm sorry if you take this as me insulting you listeners, but I don't think we've done a particularly good job at, number one, telling the people around us what the most rational thing to do is. And if we have been, they've simply not listened. And that's a massive proportion of our country. And it's cuts across the racial lines.
I think we can give ourselves specifically in the studio a break because we're young.
It's not our fault.
Exactly.
It's your fault.
If you're older than 40, it's probably your fault. You haven't done enough to convince people in the country.
Do you think there's something, off the top of my head, is there something psychologically in South Africans that we like authority? Is there like a strain? Do you think across race and all that sort of background?
You see the reaction to whenever you talk about gay rights. Remember the debates over gay marriage and all of these things, the spanking of children, all of these things. You see, it just comes out, and if South Africans are united, they're united on nothing else, not on race, but when it comes to these authoritarian things, like,
no, exactly. I mean, there's a big idea going around in South Africa that our big problem is a lack of discipline.
Yeah, exactly.
The problem, the reason our economy is doing so badly and the crime is so high is because there's a lack of discipline. So we need to spank our children, and government needs more power.
You just in your rotangs.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something else, this discipline issue. People are even calling for conscription. People who call themselves liberals are calling for conscription because we don't have enough discipline. If we had more conscription, all of these people would be sorted out.
Government just needs a bit more power. That's all.
That's another thing. South Africans love magical solutions.
Yeah.
I think when we are faced with real problems, South Africans tend to be able to solve problems in a useful, realistic way. But then when they are thinking and talking about, society-wide problems and their solutions, they just have these fantastical ideas, like magical solutions. It's okay, if you just had conscription, you fix the entire country. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, then moving on to our second and final topic. It's also linked to the taxation and government spending, the whole thing. There were comments recently by the Eskom COO, Jan Oberholzer. He said that Eskom does not have the money to lay off staff. And Eskom does not have any money for retrenchment packages. Now, when you're an entity that's in financial trouble, as we all know Eskom is, and there's no money for it, and I think they got another bailout recently. I know the SABC got one, and I'm
50,
sure
59 billion, something like that.
So you don't have the money for it, but then you can't cut costs by laying people off. I'm not following the logic. Maybe
it doesn't have the money to save money.
Right, there we go. Yeah. So, for you, I mean, I think you're more economically literate than we are. I mean, I'm just do the abstract philosophy stuff. So does this make sense to you, what he's saying?
Well, I'm just going to talk about it from a communal point of view. Like, you have a situation where a company is telling you that I can't afford to get rid of the stuff that I have, which means that they can't afford to have the stuff that they have. If you can't afford to get rid of it, then it means you can't afford to have it.
He also mentioned that the sort of sensitive economic climate and that we don't have economic growth, it would be bad to lay off people.
What perverted bloody logic.
There we get that ultra strain that you and I discuss every now and
then. You see, this is the same thing that keeps recurring. Like, we understand that South Africa has a massive unemployment rate. Like, everyone agrees. But one of the solutions to this problem is to create unemployment in the state. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's just a fact. We need a very unemployed state working force right now. Because they are unproductive. They get paid, from what I'm hearing, from what I've heard, state employees get very handsomely paid. They get very well paid to do, in most cases, virtually nothing. And in the cases where they do work, that work translates into decreased economic activity for the rest of us because they're regulating us trying to be productive. We need unemployment in the state. That is what we need. So what our friend at Eskom here is doing is he's trying to appeal to our sense of, but unemployment is a problem. We can't fire state workers. That is, it's deceitful. It's very deceitful. And I mean, we need, I've seen that graph a few times. I don't know the exact numbers, but the staff at Eskom over the last decade has something like doubled, and it has the exact same power output that it
even less.
So we obviously need to get rid of people at Eskom. I mean, it's a no-brainer, and people all across government. So this is intellectually dishonest, and I really hope no one is falling for this. We need far more unemployment in the state in this country.
Well, this is the finance minister Tito Mboweni said something interesting this week. It could have been last week as well. Like he was
talking about him clapping back.
He was hosting a colloquium on economy policy or something like that, so discussing the document that they released with the private sector players. And he basically said that the states in South Africa, he was implying that, of course, this is the states and trade unions and all of these people, but he said in South Africa, people don't understand trade-offs. They think you can have everything at the same time. But it just doesn't work like that. Like, you have to sacrifice something else if you want to have something else. This is a basic. Everyone who runs a household budget knows this. That's when you're adding up your cents every month, your rands and cents. You always think, okay, food is the most important thing, so I'll probably have to sacrifice some fun here to make sure that I have enough for my family to eat. But government doesn't think like that. Everything that they want or the cronies want, they just think they can do it all at the same time. And this is why South Africa is heading to collapse as of now. Like this, the only way that they can get the right incentives is if you force them as the voter, as the person who they rely on for power. Like, there are only two things that can stop them: either you refuse to pay taxes, or you used to vote them out. Those are the only two things.
I don't think government is this monolith that can never fall. I think maybe we sometimes make the mistake of we do that with big with like Eskom and big companies. We talk about too big to fail. Government can only act and continue existing by your consent. So you should always remember that they're here to serve you, not the other way around. I mean, maybe for some of them they see themselves as kings and kings and queens, but that's not the proper moral role for government.
Yeah, and we have places around the world like the Congo where most people in the Congo, there's no government. Like, the government has fallen for them. Like, in international geopolitics, you still say Congo as a government.
Right.
There's no government. There's a little municipal government in Kinshasa, and that's it.
Yeah. Okay, viewers, thanks once again for joining us. I think we'll end on that note.
And thank you for Martin van Staden for saying anarchy can work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, they don't live a very productive and peaceful life in the Congo, unfortunately.
You've already said enough, it's fine.
I think you two can have this this debate on another episode. Martin, will you just remind everyone where they can follow us, find our work?
Definitely, yeah. So, as always, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. It's a big red button right under this video. Follow us on Twitter, that's at FMF South Africa, one word. Like us on Facebook, Free Market Foundation South Africa, or facebook.com/FMFSA. And please visit our website, www.freemarketfoundation.com, one word. And keep up to date with what the FMF is busy with. And then we'll see you all again next week. Have a good weekend. Cheers.
Enjoy the rugby.